And even if you have the perfect theory, they're not necessarily going to work for you. And the only way that you approach effective theory is to start by noticing all the stuff that you're not really happy with. And we don't like doing that because we always think that we're better than we are. Always focusing on theory first, most amount of information first, is actually shooting us in the foot, right? We all learn by fucking up. I fuck up probably a dozen times a day. Hello and welcome back to a show that I try to start for the 100th time, which is a segment for the real ones from this channel. You know that I tried to start something called Coffee Wednesday a few years ago. But the running joke here is that every time I try to start this show, something happens that derails the entire show, right? Something happens where I'm like, okay, the show's going well. I might even turn this into turn it into a whole show on its own. But it never gets there. And somehow I get distracted by a new opportunity. Somehow there's a different thing that came up. So over time, I got really frustrated with myself. And over time, I said to myself, you know what? We are going to do it, and we're going to do it right. So we are going to reintroduce Coffee Wednesday. And a Coffee Wednesday's idea is a more laid-back version of our normal videos, which are kind of geared towards SEO and all that crap, because if you are in a content creation space, and I swear to God, I feel like everyone I know around me is trying to start something. They're trying to start an Instagram page, upload reels, or start a podcast. You know that sometimes you don't really get to make what you want to make. On this platform for the last 8 years, I can confidently say I make some of the topics that I choose are more trend-friendly. I tend to engineer some of my videos alongside some of the concerns that you guys have. And I tend to engineer some of my videos to tackle specific solutions. But also, the problem with that is, if you do this for an extended period of time, in my case, it's like, God, it's 8 years, the passion or the work that you used to put into these shows, or the kind of effort that you used to, the kind of enthusiasm that you used to bring to the table, they all get swallowed up by a script or a specific marker that you have to check. So over time, it got really frustrating. So I said to myself, okay, we're going to reserve one little segment just for us, the longtime viewers of this channel. We're going to have one episode a week where we just get to hang out. I'm going to put a new Ask Me Anything section on a newsletter pretty soon, and we're gonna launch the newsletter in the next video. It's a sponsored post, so I'm just scripting that. And in fact, this segment here, it's just frankly me trying to. A part of me is like, I'm avoiding the main thing so I can do this fun on the side kind of thing. So this show is not going to be for people who just want to jump on this channel for solve a reading problem that I have. It's not going to be for people who complain about how long some of my videos are, right? Some people write me comments like, this video can be condensed down into a 4-minute segment. Yes, stick around, because that's what the main videos are going to be about. I pack a lot in a relatively short amount of time, but on these segments, we're going to hang out, grab a cup of coffee, sit down, let's talk about life, reading, and everything in between. And in fact, do me a favor. Leave me some of your concerns, questions, or things that I can help you with, given my experience, and I will answer them in the coming videos. And in fact, we can even turn this into a office hour situation, even though I'm not exactly sitting in any offices other than my home office, which is well lit. So also, production quality is going to start to improve. I sold a bunch of my old lenses, and I got this beautiful lens that's really good for studio work, and I really want to start doing more stuff. And in fact, if you guys want an audio feed of this, upcoming episodes will start to get recorded into audio feeds. I haven't really figured out a way to coordinate podcast content with the stuff on this channel, so this could be a really great way into this new chapter or this new evolution of this YouTube channel. And of course, my newsletter, A Mug of Insights, it is live right now, but it's technically not launched yet. I've been testing articles out, I've been testing formats out, but now it's pretty set in stone, so I'm very happy to launch it in the next video. But nevertheless, if you want to go check it out right now. But maybe just wait for the next video. But anyway, today we're going to talk about one thing and one thing only. So over there on A Mug of Insights, which is my kind of online magazine newsletter kind of thing, we've been writing about something like, for the past two articles at least, for the past two weekly newsletters, we've been writing about this thing that a lot of people tend to do if they have an academic background, or it doesn't even need to be an academic background. If they have a background where they have to read a lot, or if they've graduated from universities, or if they're just kind of like brainy people who prefer theory over actions, they tend to suffer a lot from, suffering from this inability to connect theory with practice, right? So I see a lot of comments from you guys that's like, okay, Robin, can you make more videos about how do I connect philosophy with everyday life? So what you're really saying here is that how do I apply theory into practice? And this is a way more complex and subtle problem than we give it credit. And if you want my whole kind of fleshed out thoughts on this topic, you can go check out my the two newsletters that I wrote this week and a week before. So read them. It's going to take you about like 20 minutes because they're quite long. I really want to focus on long form and in-depth content on my newsletter. So essentially, what I try to say from those two newsletters was that at some point you're going to need to strike a balance. At some point, you need to view reading in a way where it both enriches your mind intellectually, but you also need to find a way to apply it in real life. We also have this different camp of people who just, they argue with me and they say, what if I just enjoy reading for the sake of it? Well, fine, that's fine. But if you're a busy person, and if you are someone who's trying to get more reading into your life, I would assume that you're coming at it from a utilitarian point of view, right? And even something that seems less utilitarian, like I just want to enrich my understanding of, I don't know, the Irish War of Independence because I have Irish heritage and I want to learn more about my heritage. That's fine, But I would still consider that as you trying to extract information from a book, which is still a pretty utilitarian expectation from whatever you're reading. So given that, a lot of us have different reading goals. And a lot of us would like to read beyond the page. And what I mean by that is you would like to use some of the stuff that you've read in your life. You want to see a concrete impact from all the stuff that I teach on this channel of like how to read effectively, because we don't want you to turn into someone who just rests in a land of theory. And what I found is that, especially as of late, life and reading, in most cases, there's an interesting interplay where in order to do the right action, you're going to need some sort of theory to inform that action. And the example that I gave in a newsletter was, one day your car freaks out and it wouldn't start, right? So you would hop on Google to search for an answer. But the interesting thing here is, before you've consulted Google, you have no idea. You would have no idea what's going on with the car if you're not really a car person. And what you would default to are some of the responses that you've already used before in your life, which I call these your default positions. You would default to a certain position. You would try out the bag of tricks that you already know. But what happens if all those bags of tricks stops working, right? What if you try to jumpstart the car and that doesn't work? What if you call your dad tells you to maybe lift the hood and change whatever settings? I'm not too familiar with the engine. But what if all your bags of tricks start to run out? You would consult another source. And after you've consulted a source, you would experiment with a source. You would experiment, maybe Google tells you check your fuel gauge, right? And then when you check your fuel gauge, oh my God, you realize there's no gas in the tank. And you go fill up your car, you go to your local gas station, you get some fuel and you fill up your car, and then the car starts. So the learning loop functions from you trying out what you already know, you consulting another source to help you solve this problem, and then after you've solved the problem, you tend to remember that. So next time, I'm going to check my fuel gauge before anything else. So that entire learning loop, along with many other cases, there's one constant in all of these cases, which is that, first of all, you need to encounter a problem for you to start this whole consultation stage. Sometimes you need to, let life beat you up a little bit for you to realize that something needs to change. Sometimes you really need a kind of kick in the ass for you to realize maybe I need to read more books on personal finance because my finances are in shambles. And then you go out there, you search the information you need, you experiment with the information, and then you kind of see how it reacts in your reality, right? So there's this whole learning loop. But the problem here is, especially with a lot of us brainy people, if you watch my content, I would assume that you have some sort of nascent interest in literature and history and philosophy. The danger for us is that it's very easy for us to get to the point where we simply read without experimenting. Now you're probably going to say to me, Robin, how do I experiment with, I don't know, something random like Derrida's deconstruction? How do I experiment with that? That's such an abstract concept. How do I experiment with that? Or you say to me something like, Robin, I just love information. I want to know before I act, because I don't want to be that stupid person who just does a bunch of things and none of them work out. I want to have the perfect theory before I test them out in reality, right? And what I would say to that is precisely the thing that's stopping you from using what you've learned to live a better life. Because let's face it, love of wisdom, philosophy, what's that at the end of the day? You're trying to embody whatever the book is trying to teach you in reality. And the fault or the danger for people who are really into books without experimenting much is that they're too concerned with the perfect theory before they ever apply it to reality, right? So in the newsletter, I had the example of like a guy who's trying to buy some drum cleaning tablets for his washing machine, right? So he researches a bunch, he spends a few weeks looking it up, and then finally he finds the precise model. He heads into the store, the clerk tells him, sorry, it's out of stock, but virtually all these tablets, they work the same. But this guy's like, no, I'm not going to buy the one that you've recommended, even though the grocery store clerk probably knows more about the cleaning cycle more than you do. So you get stuck in this process where you start to reject whatever it is that reality is telling you. You start to reject something like, all the brands of maybe dishwashing machines, they all work equally well. In most cases, that's true. But if you're particularly stuck in your head, you would say that no, for example, only Ajax works well with my clothes, right? And without testing it out, you can't really know that. So you're kind of stuck in this loop where you start to reject outside information, where you stop seeing how you feel about the problem that you have at hand. And maybe even worse, you don't even know that you do have this specific problem because you spent so much time thinking about it instead of just experiencing the problem firsthand and then somehow consulting another source if you need it. So over time, we turn into this kind of like information economy junkies where we search for the best information and we hold on to it so tightly, and we don't allow anyone to question our beliefs. We don't allow anything else to come in. We don't want people to kind of screw with our perfect little theories. And a very practical example for me, I don't like eating breakfast. Virtually most of the time I skip breakfast, and I don't really want to it takes too much time. I want to dart out of the door first thing in the morning because I have a day of a really packed schedule. I want to do this when I get to work. I can't spend too much time even making coffee at home. I just don't have time, right? But then over time, if you do the thing that when reality starts to respond to the thing that you're doing, for example, coffee money starts to add up over the course of a week, right? So when you start doing your monthly budgeting, or when I started doing my monthly budgeting, I realized that I spent a ridiculous amount of money just on takeaway coffee. And also another thing is, on my drive to work, on my drive to for example, taking my laptop to a cafe where I get to write some of this stuff for you guys, where I get to script a video, where I get to strategize where this whole thing is going to go in the future, I tend to get really cranky and I have really bad road rage. And I just find myself sometimes in traffic wishing that God, there shouldn't be street side parking. Old people shouldn't be on a road. This person should have just let me through. This person should not cut in front of me. So all these crazy thoughts just conjured up a really unpleasant morning experience for me, all from skipping breakfast. So these two problems started knocking on my doors, and then I started to think about how I could solve it. So then eventually I started thinking about okay, so the data shows, or all the stuff in my life, it shows that if I don't have breakfast, there's a good chance that I'm going to be cranky on the road. There's a good chance that I'm going to blow extra money on coffee. How do I solve this problem of not having breakfast on time? And then I did some retracing, and I realized that I have this terrible habit of watching TV before I go to bed. I have a TV in my room. It's currently down there because I'm recording this video right now. I can't really have a TV in the background. I lay in bed and I watch, I'm watching Cobra Kai right now. And I tend to just put on a movie. And I'm the kind of person, I will always finish a movie if I start a movie. So over time, I adopted this routine of watching a movie every night. And by the time I finish off work, which is around 11 p.m., a movie typically runs for around 2 hours. So, bedtime's already like 1:30 to 2:30 a.m., depending on how long the movie is, right? So over time, I kind of adopted this weird schedule where I wake up at around 10, 11. I feel like the day's running out. I'm stressed. I skip breakfast. I get mad on the road. By the time I get into the city to start work, it's just already a circus freak show. So I started with that problem. I started consulting all these sources about how do you find time to eat in the morning? How do you develop a routine where you feel good about having coffee at home? And then all this stuff requires consultation, right? So I was on a lot of Instagram pages. I was on a lot of YouTube videos. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, read like maybe one book on dieting and exercising, and then I started experimenting. Maybe I shouldn't watch a movie before I go to bed. Maybe I should read a little bit before I go to bed. That's when the theory starts to connect with reality by solving a problem that you have, right? But if I went at it from a purely theoretical approach, I would read like 10 diet books. I think to myself, okay, I'm going to create the perfect diet. And this perfect diet cannot move. I'm going to create the perfect bedtime. This bedtime is set in stone, okay? I'm going to create the perfect morning routine. I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes every morning. That's set in stone. But what you're doing there is that you're not allowing reality to present you with a problem that you wanted to solve in the first place. And even if you have the perfect theory, they're not necessarily going to work for you. And the only way that you approach effective theory is to start by noticing all the stuff that you're not really happy with. And we don't like doing that because we always think that we're better than we are. So this loop of always focusing on theory first, always accumulating the most amount of information first is actually shooting us in the foot, like in the long run, right? So, and also a very important point here is you learn by fucking up. Right? We all learn by fucking up. I fuck up probably a dozen times a day. Literally yesterday, I almost got scammed, right? So I'm selling one of my older microphones on Facebook Marketplace, and then this guy messaged me within the first 3 minutes, and he just sent through this really dodgy-looking link. And I actually said, okay, let's use this link, without realizing that I was entering my bank details in a really suspicious-looking website. So I went through the whole gauntlet of changing my passwords and then doing all that stuff just because, I fucked up. But then that is the quickest way for me to then integrate a theory into my head. Next time when you see a link that's not from the official website of your financial institution, don't click it. Likewise with breakfast. Sometimes the best way to learn that it's probably good to have breakfast is to have a few terrible mornings. When you're in traffic, when you're getting pissed off, when you racked up a ridiculous coffee bill by the time you do your monthly budgeting. So all these things will start to present you a picture that you're probably not going to like. But the trick here is to use this picture, however imperfect it is, however just broken it is, and to use that picture as your blueprint to consult the theory that you need to start improving your life. Instead of the other way around where you're kind of paranoid about life. You don't want life to throw different challenges at you. And you think to yourself, I can use theory to solve everything. That's typically going to close you off from the things that you actually need to work on in your life. And that's one of my major criticisms of the content, sort of like presenting your best self on the internet all the time on Instagram and stuff, because people are obsessed with formulae for living a perfect life. People are obsessed with the perfect kind of theory for how to manage your finances, how to make the perfect cup of coffee, or how to wake up on time. We are essentially living someone else's life if we don't pay attention to the unflattering parts of ourselves. And one of the best ways for you to start using theory more effectively in your life is by turning inward. Look at what you're struggling with. Look at the corresponding theory that's going to help you solve that problem. Realize that you fucked up. And then use that theory to test a potential solution. And also remember, you can't change. You can't. You don't need the perfect theory. All you need to do is, if you want to exercise, put on a pair of running shoes. Go out there, see how it makes you feel. And then to adopt a sustainable way to keep that going. And that's a whole different talk show. We'll talk about it maybe on another episode. But for now, this is what I wanted to talk about in this episode. How do you bridge theory and practice? By noticing the things that you need help with. By noticing the things that are actually happening in your life. And that requires quite a bit of awareness. And this is probably why meditation could be a good practice for you. But anyway, whole different talk show. But nevertheless, that is going to be our pilot episode for rebooting Coffee Wednesday. I hope that you guys are behind the idea of this show. I really look forward to doing more of these, kind of just heart to heart, where I get to make videos, just because I want to get back in touch with why I started this whole thing, which is to share my journey, which is to show you guys what has worked in my life, and to keep presenting you guys with interesting tidbits, ideas, and insights to help you live a more deliberate and more, intellectually stimulating life. And that is my take on theory versus practice. And I'll see you next week, again, for Coffee Wednesday. Robin Walden here. Take care, and goodbye.